trends will always come and go. And it seems now the AAA video game industry has traded their hero shooter kink for an extraction shooter fixation. Let's talk about this change of menu, how we got here, where it might be heading, and how it might impact the rest of the industry at large, because as we've seen, rarely do these things happen in a bubble. But first, what is an extraction shooter? There seems to be a bit of confusion nowadays as more and more games have extraction gameplay elements or themes. I've seen games like Helldivers 2 be referred to as an extraction shooter. It's even listed as the most popular extraction shooter on Steam. Well, sure, I suppose that makes sense. Because it is a shooter, and you quite literally land in a hostile area, then work to extract yourself from it. But for the sake of understanding what's coming down the pipeline, I'll be looking to Escape from Tarkov as the baseline definition of an extraction shooter. I'm not sure if it's the first or even the best, but it is certainly the most well-known example. The first defining feature, for me, is heavy resource management. You start with almost nothing, maybe a gun and some bullets, a couple ketchup packets, and you slowly build up your arsenal. These games thrive on the feeling of scarcity. It's a different sort of pleasure. On one end of the shooter spectrum, you have shooters that offer bullet-hosing power fantasies, legions of faceless enemies, and legendary drops every 5 minutes. But here, because resources are so rare, every bullet is special. Every kill is intimate. And every death is a disaster because you lose everything you bring with you. I feel that's the second defining feature. You can lose items. You have one big inventory where you keep all of your stuff. That one's safe no matter what happens to you. And you have a second inventory that's just on your character. This is the stuff you go into the battle zone with. How many band-aids are you taking because you don't want to risk bleeding out? Do you bring the good underwear behind enemy lines and hopefully get better loot? And you have to accept that no matter how well equipped you are, there is no guarantee you'll survive. You are always fragile, and every outing is a gamble. The only way you get to keep anything is by making it to the extraction zone. The third and fourth defining feature, I reckon, are a pair of adjectives: hardcore and bare bones. When I say hardcore, I don't mean only the roughest, toughest shooters in the West are allowed to play and every other shooter's a baby game, no. Hardcore and bare bones used to signify that the game leaned more towards realism, kinda. You have a minimal UI, bullets disorient you when they whiz by, there's bullet drop, rain muffling sounds, glare can be seen coming off of rifle scopes, you have to eat, drink, and mind your weather conditions. It's a dense emphasis on the little things. It's more closely associated with military simulators at this point. And these are not hard-stuck rules so much as a general philosophy, and many developers have already put their own spin on the genre. Marauders was a sci-fi twist released in 2022, essentially Space from Tarkov. Dark and Darker is a more Dungeons & Dragons theme, traded out the guns with swords in 2023. Zero Sievert, I still don't know how to pronounce, made a single-player version in 2024. I hear Hunt Showdown is an extraction shooter, but I haven't played enough of it myself to draw the distinction. If true, then this pushes the timeline back to 2019, and I'm sure you could push the genre back even further. But right now, it feels like it's prime production time. Bungie's making Marathon. Titanfall 3 was cancelled and evidently was going to be an extraction shooter. Arc Raiders just had a public playtest. It feels like everyone's making some kind of extraction-inspired game. Except for From Software. They're making two. Duskbloods, exclusively for the Switch 2, and Night Rain. From the business side, it does make sense why the industry is pressed to make the next big extraction shooter, if you consider Escape from Tarkov to be the MySpace of the genre. I am now realizing that MySpace was 22 years ago, so I actually have to explain what that means for my younger listeners. MySpace was the big social media platform, the biggest globally from 2005 to 2009. MySpace improved on the formula founded by another site called Friendster. Then Facebook came along and improved on the MySpace formula, and nothing has replaced Facebook in the past 16 years. Referring to something as the MySpace of whatever means there's still room for competition to improve on the base formula and take over. Someone can still make Facebook. Now, I wouldn't say Escape from Tarkov is a bad game, but I would say there's a lot of room for quality of life improvement. Firstly, it's an exclusive purchase. You can only get it on their website. Imagine ripping Tarkov off 1-to-1, but you can put it on Steam and consoles. Who knows how well that would do. Secondly, Escape from Tarkov has been under development since 2012, and it's just now about to hit a 1.0 full release. A AAA company could easily catch up and overcome their current development pace. Thirdly, and this is probably the biggest reason as to why we see more investors interested in extraction shooters, modern monetization models. Tarkov was designed way before the current standard practices of battle passes and microtransactions. Back then, you paid to access a game early, really early, and it was called founder status. Oftentimes, the game would just die and you paid full price for an unfinished game, but sometimes the game survived and you'd get some extra perks in return for your early support. But that means you couldn't get these same people, your most loyal supporters, to pay again and again and again before full release like you can these days. I also think it's worth considering the angles where this isn't purely an executive trend chase. I do think there are creative reasons for why we're seeing more extraction shooters. Namely, it's a fun, niche genre that some developers like to play. Most people are probably turned off by the slower, high-risk gameplay, but if it gets you, it really gets you in a way that few games do. And speaking of masochists, it was back in 2023 where Miyazaki, the mind behind Dark Souls and Elden Ring, was reportedly looking to Tarkov for multiplayer inspiration as a creator himself and a fan of the game. And now, there's two of them coming from his company. Part of me thinks this infectious fervor comes from the genre being relatively unexplored. It's a different kind of joy for some developers, the ones that get to create without preconceived notions as to what a game should be. They get to put in their own little twist, their personality, and I'm sure each one of them knows that they have a chance to leave behind a game design legacy. They have a chance to make the Facebook, the Minecraft, the Fortnite of extraction shooters. I need to think that this is driven by passion and curiosity as much as it is driven by profit. But even if this current trend comes from the heart, I don't think it's going to come without considerable heartbreak, because I think the extraction shooter genre is almost too conflicted to go mainstream, or even reach a wide enough audience for the AAA industry to bother. In my opinion, it suffers from what some would refer to as cursed design. This is when elements of your game naturally come into conflict with one another. They almost can't exist in the same space. If you want to know more about cursed design problems, I will link this lovely video in the description. But basically, it's a contradiction of goals. How do you make a hardcore genre accessible, or even palatable to the average player without accidentally making something else entirely? How can you be hardcore and casual? All the potentially fun stuff in extraction shooters is also the potentially frustrating stuff. Sniping a player from 200 meters out makes you feel alive. But being on the other end, dying out of nowhere, makes players want to stay away. It's like trying to invent a way for someone to have all the fun of building a sand castle at the beach, but without getting sunburn or sand in all your nooks and crannies. That's just the risk you take. It's a part of life. You could make the UI more readable, show objectives, make it easier to aim, make it so you don't die so fast, but also speed up the combat so you see more than one person every hour, and make loot less scarce. But then what have we made here? It's like the ship of Theseus, but instead I trade out all the boat parts with car parts. And even though I get a kick-ass Lambo, it doesn't float. There's no telling if that will or will not be an enjoyable game, but I can tell you that that will be pretty far removed from an extraction shooter. Whatever that thing is you just freestyled, it already exists and has a flooded market. And I think it's a valid concern because this industry has a habit of suffocating itself with past data. On the other end of the spectrum, I think it will be amusing to see who pushes the genre to its most sadistic limits. There's always at least one developer who exaggerates design and takes a completely different approach. You want hardcore gaming? I'll give you hardcore gaming. You die in this game, you die in real life. It's probably going to be either Miyazaki or Kojima. Really, what's left to see is who succeeds in what way, or how many failures the industry is willing to accept before calling it quits on this current trend chase. I think there are more extraction shooters to come because I think it's an untapped market with a lot of potential. That can be seen from a business and a creative standpoint. It's the exact opposite of the hero shooter trend chase that had little room for AAA to squeeze in and gave us big hits like Concord. I expect another mass grave though, because this genre is a tricky beast. Really, if I had to place a bet, I would say that the next big AAA game will start as an extraction shooter, but then pivot to something else entirely. That's how it went for Overwatch. That's how it went for Fortnite. Maybe the next big thing is actually an insertion shooter. I don't know. I have thoughts though.